Good morning, folks. Here's some old news regarding the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 status, and that is the narrative designer Brian Mitsoda and creative director Kai Cluney have been fired. This is the official website of Bloodlines 2. Are no longer part of the team at Hardsuit Labs. This was a joint decision made by the leadership of Hardsuit Labs and Paradox Interactive. So they fired these two guys who have been there since the beginning. Brian Mitsoda has been working on this game for at least 5 years as the narrative designer, essentially the lead writer, the guy who does all the writing and dialogue and the scenes, the layout of the entire events of the game. And the creative director is someone who does all the visual, all the feel, the look of the levels, the clothing, the lighting, all the visual elements, that even the sound elements as well, depending on his focus of the game. So they're replacing Kai Cluney with another fellow called Alexander Mandraka has come on board as a creative consultant, filling the creative director role for Bloodlines 2. So that implies that some of the creative work has not been done yet, or has to be fixed or refined or what have you. So they're not replacing Brian Mitsoda. Now, Brian Mitsoda recently had a interview or a statement on Rock, Paper, Shotgun about this whole fiasco. So until recently, I was the narrative lead on the video game Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, being published by Paradox Interactive, which owns 30% of Hardsuit Labs. Good to know. After almost 5 years, I was suddenly terminated 3 days ago. 7 days ago. At this time, as a shock to me, as I was underselling it, I've worked on Bloodlines 2 for almost 5 years. The story and main cast was initially conceived in my living room. I helped develop the patch for Hardsuit Labs and helped pitch the product to Paradox in Las Vegas. Now, it could be because he's so good at writing and his team is so good at doing the job, everything's done. That could be the thing. The problem is you say, hey, Brian, your work is done. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a great career doing what you're doing. We'll stick around for the party of the launch, etc., etc. They didn't say that. They didn't say that publicly. They just fired him. So something happened. Something was going on. Now, if you don't know Brian and Kai, or Kai, I don't know how to pronounce his name, they're very left-leaning. And it's very rare to get creative directors fired for one reason or another. The most recent one was not a firing, but someone who left, which is Chris Avallone, one of my favorite guys in the industry, for stuff he said on Twitter and this or that, allegations of sexual misconduct. He just decided to leave. Fine. That's the big... I didn't think it was a big deal because I don't care what happens in these people's personal lives. It shouldn't affect their work. And it doesn't, I don't believe. So people want him to leave, or he felt like he should leave. He left. That's fine. But, you got to show these guys some love sometimes, as I don't know what's going on. We don't know the story. They don't know the story. It's kind of sad to see this stuff. So I've also been involved in the PR and marketing side of things, even though it was one of the most difficult parts for me. I'm a pretty private person. Press and crowds tend to heavily trigger my social anxiety, which if you ever wondered about the gloves, they are armor that make me feel less exposed in situations that trigger my anxiety. So here's Brian Mitsoda. In all his interviews, he's the guy with the gray, cool hair with these fingerless gloves. We're not sure what this means, but to him, it's his psychological defense against his social anxiety in public. And that's a cool thing. If you could have a prop or a favorite shirt or whatever to make you feel better in public, why not? That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Be strange, be weird, we don't care. Whatever makes you feel better. He seems like a cool guy. And if he's that sort of fellow to dedicate so much time working long days and sometimes weekends to deliver a successor to the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, I've never been led to believe if I hadn't succeeded. So this guy worked weekends and long days to get the writing right for 5 years. So something must have happened during that time frame where there was a deadline, They didn't have enough dialogue. It wasn't proofread. Whatever the case may be, this guy spends the weekend getting his writing working done. That takes dedication for a 5-year project of a video game, which to me means this is the kind of guy who would have done this regardless of whether he was getting paid. He would have woken up, say, I got to get this work done because it's in my head. Like any writer who gets up in the morning goes, oh my God, what a great idea. I got to write this down before I forget it. And he spends the rest of his day or whatever getting it out. That's the kind of passion this guy's got. As strange and cool or weird as you think he is, he's dedicated. And they just fired him, and we don't know why. Bloodlines and the fandom of the game mean the world to me, so I sent my legacy with the franchise, my name, and my participation in marketing efforts for the game, even when it was intensely difficult and took a mental and physical toll. This is all because I wanted to do what was best for the game and the team. And I don't know if you remember the announcement. It sort of came out of nowhere, and there were these long, like this is an hour-long stream on Paradox Interactive. It was kind of a big deal to launch. It was kind of awkward to watch. It was a bit strange. They launched it with their weird social app thing, which was just an in-game sort of joke. But it was a big deal, at least from a gamer perspective. Bloodlines being a sleeper hit, and we all know the story behind what happened with the pre-source engine that it was forced to make that it could only come out after Half-Life 2 came out. So Bloodlines 2 is one of those cult classics that remains awesome to this day. The pride in the work, the fan expectations, and the support from coworkers who started out as fans kept me going through these 5 long years. I'm incredibly disappointed and frustrated to say that this is where it ends for me on the project. I would have liked to have seen him at the party, if there was a party. I mean, in today's times, if they could even have a virtual party of launch. Maybe they'll bring him in. I don't know. We want more stories as to why this has happened. What happened? Why did they fire Brian? Just say, it was because of the virus. We didn't have enough money. His job was done. Give us a reason. Give Brian a reason. Tell us what's going on. And they haven't told us. I was not part of the conversations that led to the decision to delay production. And to my knowledge, there were no delays caused by the Bloodlines 2 narrative development. I am confident and proud of the work that I and my team put forward. When that work will be seen and what form it will take is unknown to me. So they're pretty much just cutting ties. They didn't say anything. They didn't give him a severance. Just bye. Nothing. We don't know what's going on. It was a pleasure to work on this game with many people in Hardsuit Labs and Paradox, and I'm sorry I won't be able to see it to the end. I spent years on some of the best characters and dialogue that I ever wrote. It's meant a lot to hear from the Bloodlines community. I do hope that's what's finally delivered as satisfying as I intended it to be. Thanks to all of you who supported me throughout the project. Now, this is interesting because he's really proud of what he did, but there's no mention of people changing anything. Now, I originally did a video last year in March when it was all announced. And I said, hey, you know what? It might not be a political mess, even though we know all these lefties and progressive people are on it trying to make it political, and it is probably going to be a political story, as we've heard some mentions from other articles on VG 24/7 saying it's definitely taking political stances. We think are right or wrong, and that's fine. Some of the story in the first game was also political, dealing with the people in charge of the Masquerade and people trying to look out for Vampire and the whole mystery surrounding that. That's fine. But Brian Mitsoda was in charge of that first game, and he was in charge of this game. So a lot could happen in, I think, a year. It's going to take for this game to come out, another year or so. And they could rewrite dialogue. They can do whatever they want. He's not in charge anymore. So this is kind of the issue I have, that they can just do their own thing, their own creative vision, especially when they fired the creative director and the lead writer. Those are the two major guys who would cause a change or a vision or a message to be part of the story or narrative of a game. So I'm not feeling too happy about this announcement. Show some love to Brian online. He's on Twitter. He's a cool guy. Wish we could help him out. Say hello, what have you. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. Hope you're having a great day.